Hi, and thanks for the opportunity to introduce you to a new approach to investment, one that centers around you and your best interests, and delivers not only a winning method, but a platform to reverse the unfortunate condition many American investors find themselves in today. 60% of working Americans think their retirement account is on the wrong track. This according to a study done by annuity.org. Are you one of them? If so, I'll let you in on a little secret. That's exactly the way the financial establishment wants it. But more on that a little later. The number one mistake made by all investors is that they fail to employ an allocation method that makes sense, which is the reason for their portfolio's lackluster performance. So what does that portfolio look like? Well, according to industry statistics provided by the Investment Company Institute, or ICI, 116 million Americans own on average 4 different mutual funds, largely split 3-1 in favor of equity funds over bond or fixed income products. So 1 in 3 Americans own mutual funds, and according to Business Insider, nearly 90% of them fail to outperform their market benchmark. And the reason for that excessive failure rate is because mutual funds are not built to outperform their market benchmark. Instead, they're built for diversification purposes, which is the reason why investors need a lot of it, not just one mutual fund, but a basket of several. Truth be told, most investors are over-diversified to such a great extent that their portfolios travel with the speed of a tugboat and with the agility of a tractor-trailer. They're just too big to perform any other way. So it's no wonder that the number one complaint about financial advisors is that they fail to deliver on the expected returns they project, which is the reason why so many retirement accounts are seen to be on the wrong track. Hi, my name is Dan Calandro, financial scientist, investment coach and instructor, and award-winning author on the topic of investment. I've been conducting research and analysis on marketable securities in the financial markets for almost 40 years now, and what I've learned in that time is that everything the financial establishment espouses, every pitch, promise, and supposed fact, is all based on what's best for them. And that's a fact, as is every stat or claim I make herein, which have all been sourced, proven mathematically or scientifically by me, or some historical account. For instance, have you ever heard the old Wall Street adage, one must take greater risk in order to achieve greater reward? Well, that's not true, and I can prove it mathematically and scientifically. In fact, I created a method of allocation called 1551 that proves it's not only possible, but incredibly easy to reliably produce more return with less risk. I'll expand on that more in a moment. But how about another quick example? Have you ever heard the popular Wall Street disclaimer, past performances are not indicative of future results? Well, that's not true either. This can also be proven by my 1551 method, which features smarter design and superior construction, and thereby produces consistent and reliable superior performances over any long-term period, past, present, or future. And it'll do so for the same reason a BMW will consistently outperform a Volkswagen. One is built better than the other, by design, method of construction, and componentry. My award-winning 1551 method makes building a BMW-type investment portfolio easy to construct, manage, and monitor. People always ask, Dan, why can't I just give you my money to manage? Or why can't you just start a hedge fund so I can invest in it? My answer to them is always the same, because I don't want to give up my right to free speech. You see, if I were to become a licensed money manager, I couldn't say that past performances are indicative of future results. And I could not say that greater reward comes most easily with less risk. Both would be against the law. Which is why you never hear those words come out of your financial advisor's mouth. In fact, just the opposite is advertised in every industry campaign or sales effort. So those are some things your financial advisor can never say, even if they believe them to be true. And that is the nature of the Wall Street establishment. And just to make something very clear here, I'm not calling every financial advisor a liar, not even suggesting it. Instead, it is my belief that they just don't know any better. So to them, it's not a lie. It's just a lack of understanding. And that's because they don't spend every free moment of their lives doing endless research and analysis in hopes of developing new science, like I do. And that highlights the main difference between me and financial advisors. I'm a scientist looking to teach and support people to invest successfully on their own. And they're just salespeople towing the company line that keeps their clients in the dark so they can control their money and guide it into profitable products that benefit themselves and their firms first and foremost. That's their job. That's their business. It's what they do. My business is to help people learn to be independent, self-reliant investors in a manner they can understand and comfortably perform. My methods are straightforward, easy to understand, and simple to use. They're based on logic and common sense and proven by fact, simple math, and long-term experience. This powerful combination consistently generates far greater returns than every mutual fund, ETF, or market index sold on the market today, with less risk. So if you're like so many others and believe you can't understand investment, or think that you don't have the time or ability to invest successfully, I'm telling you, you're wrong. I can teach anyone to do this with great success, with little time and little effort. How about some proof before going any further? Consider this example a small demonstration of how easy it could be to build a winning portfolio. Are you ready? Okay, we've already ascertained that the vast majority of mutual funds fail to outperform their market benchmark. And for many of those mutual funds, that benchmark is the S&P 500. Over the last 10 years, the S&P 500 produced a 185% return on investment, or 18.5% per year for 10 years. So here is one surefire way to consistently outperform the S&P 500 over any long-term period, which again is something nearly 90% of all mutual funds fail to do. Use a sheet of paper to print off a list of the top 50 stocks in the S&P 500 and tape it to a wall. From the other side of the room, launch 15 darts towards that piece of paper. Then test the portfolio comprised of those 15 stocks over the course of a 10-year period and try not to be shocked by the results. When I did this using my 1551 method, my portfolio produced an amazing 3,245% 10-year return, or 325% per year for 10 years, which is 18 times greater than the S&P 500. And that's just basic math and common sense applied to investment. Think about it for a moment. There should be little surprise that stocks in the top 10% of any mutual fund, market index, or ETF to be the highest quality stocks in that portfolio. Now, that may sound profound, but it's obvious. And long before I came along, the law of large numbers proved that it's easier to outperform with smaller numbers. Mutual funds routinely own between 500 and 1,500 stocks, with some owning thousands. So let me ask, which portfolio has more risk? One comprised of 500 stocks or one with just 15? You see, investing is not as complicated as they make it seem. It's logical, simple math, and common sense. But if you wanted to take a deeper, more scientific look into their performances, you'll find that my 1551 portfolio experiences greater results as measured not only by return on investment, but also alpha. It experiences less volatility as measured by standard deviation, and lower risk as measured by beta, and significantly stronger performance as measured by relative strength, RSI, or any other risk measurement like Sharpe or Traynor. Any way you cut it, less is best with investment. It's that simple. Yet despite that simplicity, 66% of those who own mutual funds in direct contribution plans like 401ks also own them in IRAs and other personal accounts. In other words, more than 70 million Americans own mutual funds when not mandated by law to do so. That's nuts. And there's only one possible reason for that: a lack of understanding. An uneducated consumer is more likely to overpay for products and services, more likely to buy more products and services than they need, and more likely to buy inferior products or services that don't suit their needs. 58% of Americans polled failed the financial literacy test with a grade of 51% or less, as reported by Annuity. That's because the entire financial establishment, academia, media, service providers, and the government spend billions of dollars every year convincing Americans that they're too stupid to invest successfully on their own, that ordinary people don't have the time, brains, or wherewithal to have a chance investing on their own. Hence the need for 401ks, mutual funds, and a national retirement plan like Social Security. Think about it. Why would anyone need Social Security, financial advisors, or mutual funds if building a winning portfolio was easy to understand and simple to do. The average age of an American mutual fund owner is 52 years old, and by all accounts, including a study published by the Wall Street Journal, Social Security trust funds will be fully depleted by 2034, just as the average mutual fund owner reaches retirement. America is in a bad way right now. Central governance is bankrupting the fiscal system and collapsing the value of the dollar. Mutual fund owners can't waste any more time or money with expensive, poorly performing investment products. It's time to invest time in better results, because strong investment gains are the only way to protect wealth against inflation and other bad government policy. Only 3 things are needed to invest successfully: a winning method, access to accurate information and analysis, and the will to execute. Along with a little trusted support, and you have it all. To help in that effort, I'm launching a fully hosted and 2-way interactive social support network for individuals looking to invest the way I invest. We'll talk more about that a little later, but first let me tell you a quick story of how this all began for me. October 19th, 1987, Black Monday. Still the single largest one-day drop in value for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, a whopping 23%, occurred in my final year of college at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. And for a finance and economics major, it couldn't have happened at a better time. The campus was abuzz. What the hell just happened? The answers from 3 particular professors are still fresh in my mind. The first was an adjunct by night and a young executive by day at nearby Pratt Whitney in Hartford, Connecticut. Before October 19th, I didn't know the guy was capable of smiling, or that his voice had a range beyond a single tone. But on that Monday night, he entered class with some real flair and said, "Today is the greatest day of your lives, your parents' lives, and those of your friends and other relatives. Everything is on sale in the stock market," he said, and then began to rattle off this stock and that. I remember him looking like a kid in a candy store as he went on uninterrupted for more than a half an hour before pausing with, "But if you can only buy one stock, buy Walmart." And I remember thinking, Walmart? What the heck is Walmart? Remember, this was Connecticut in 1987, and Walmart hadn't yet expanded north of the Mason-Dixon line. The local New England market was serviced by the likes of Kmart, Sears, Bradley's, and Caldor. And with limited cable news and no internet at the time, Walmart was a complete unknown to most of us. The adjunct filled the rest of the night with talk not about stocks, but with discussion about what the companies those stocks represented did, how they did it, and what they did differently. He seemed smart, and all I could think about was how he hadn't brought up mutual funds, which was a recent topic in my investment class that met on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so I asked, "What do you think of mutual funds?" He looked me square in the eye and said, "They suck." His reason? Because it was too easy to find good stocks, like Walmart, and according to him, why own a fund of many when you can own a select few great ones? And that was the end of that. The next day was Tuesday, and that meant it was time for the investment class again. And that professor was a crusty old Wall Street trader turned salesman, burnt out from the fast pace of the early 80s and now retired. And who on that Tuesday morning in October 1987 looked as if he had seen a ghost and had run from it all night long, with a bottle of Jim Beam in one hand and a cigarette in the other. I remember him looking scared, pale white and disheveled, when he said, "I don't know if it's 1929 all over again, but it sure as hell looks like it's heading that way." And that was the reason he said it was important to diversify with mutual funds, that investors needed the safety of broad diversification to lessen the impact of volatility. Gold, he said, was a must for every portfolio, as was cash, because no one ever went broke with it in hand. That's an interesting take, I thought. Later that day was a money and banking class, and the professor for that one was a former Federal Reserve economist who had been retired for a few years before October 1987 arrived. He was a creature of habit and had a very specific routine before sitting down and starting his lecture. Our job was to write down everything he said, and before Black Monday, everyone figured he was smart because he obviously wrote the notes he recited, but no one really knew, until the day after, that is. He entered class that day with a much more subdued brand of confidence than the Monday nighter did, and in fact, started the day as he did every other day, with the same routine and the same pace. He slowly made his way to the desk, carefully unpacked his bag, cautiously sat down, and then opened his notebook to the day's lesson with no chance of ripping a page. He took a mild glance at it and said, "Let's talk about what happened yesterday." And for the first time all year, he freewheeled a 2-hour lecture. He started with, first of all, this is not 1929 all over again, and anyone suggesting it doesn't know what they're talking about. In fact, it's nothing like it, except for the major stock market correction. He went on, the underlying economy is strong, slowing, but still strong, and the banking system is far stronger than it was in 1929. Reserves were adequate, and the Federal Reserve had plenty of room to add liquidity if it had to. Black Monday, he said, would prove to be nothing more than a blip on a radar screen. And then boom, the guy went through every facet of money, banking, and investment like it was a prepared speech. And all it did was make you feel comfortable and confident that indeed he was right. Black Monday was just a correction. And so I asked, what do you think of mutual funds? He pondered for a long moment and then spoke as carefully as someone testifying before Congress and said, they could be a useful tool in a well-orchestrated investment scheme. That's interesting, I thought. Of the 3 professors, one loved mutual funds, one hated them, and the other thought they could be useful. I graduated college the following May not knowing who was right. The opportunity to dig deeper into the mutual fund question presented itself a few years later while attending graduate school at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. It was in a marketing class, of all things, where a project was given to create a real, viable product and deliver a full-fledged business and marketing plan to bring it to market. There were to be no widgets or pipe dreams in this exercise. Everything had to be real, possible, and well-planned. So I figured if mutual funds did stink, or at least weren't that good, maybe I could figure a way to make a better one. And if that was possible, perhaps I could find a low-cost way to deliver them to market and make them cheaper to investors. That would make it easier to market, gain acceptance, and return profit. Heck, lower cost, better quality always works and would make the business plan more viable. Even back then, most mutual funds didn't beat the market, and so I set out to create a method that would. The first step in that process was to define the market benchmark mutual funds failed to outperform, which in the days before the internet was no easy task. I had to dig through catalog cards, microfiche, and annual reports. But soon enough, I discovered that the quote-unquote market was synonymous with the Dow Jones Industrial Average, a portfolio comprised of only 30 stocks. The other market index, the S&P 500, was comprised of more than 500 stocks, and that the average mutual fund owned more than 750 stocks. I also learned that the Dow Jones Industrial Average consistently outperformed the S&P 500 back then. And that's when the name of the company for my project came to me. Superfunds, America's first micro mutual fund, using the tagline, smaller, better, cheaper. I was never more proud of a class project in my life. It was an A. It had to be. And I was as confident in that as Professors 1 and 3 were about Black Monday. Conventional mutual funds did stink, and my method was better and more useful in any portfolio. And as agreed, I handed the project in 2 weeks before the final. I should mention at this point that I really needed an A on the project and the final exam. At the time, I was working for a Fortune 500 company who had a very generous tuition reimbursement program. The company paid for the entire course and book in advance, and final grades had to be submitted upon completion. As long as an A or B grade was earned in the class, nothing further had to be done. In the case of a C grade, students had to repay 50% of the total cost, and 100% had to be repaid in the case of a D or an F. Needless to say, not a good career move. The marketing course that required the project was midterm and final only, with each accounting for 50% of the final grade. But shortly after the semester began, my mother encountered her first battle with cancer, which caused me to miss several classes and culminated in the failing grade on the midterm exam. And just like that, I was staring at a final C grade, assuming, of course, I was able to ace the final. So I did what all macho men do in the face of such adversity. I went to the professor and begged for an opportunity to complete a makeup project. He instantly connected with my situation, as his wife had just completed the treatment cycle for the same kind of cancer my mother had, and so a deal was struck. Ace the project, ace the final, and he gave me an A for the course. Needless to say, I was never more attentive in the classes that followed, and never studied harder for a final, which was an essay exam. I recall using a handful of blue books to complete my answers, not leaving anything to chance. As I worked feverishly on it, the professor placed the project on my desk and swiftly returned to the front of the class. I glanced at the cover. No grade. That's funny, I thought. I quickly flipped through it, and there it was on the last page. See me after class. And for a moment I thought, did I miss something? No, I couldn't have. Was it possible he didn't like it? No, that couldn't be it either. And then I thought, he probably just wanted to tell me how great I was to my face. Yeah, that's it. I smiled and went back to work on the final. Night classes were 3 hours long, and it took me only 2 to complete the final. With 1 hour spare, I went to the student lounge and grabbed a cup of coffee. And for the next 60 minutes, I practiced gestures of humility as I imagined the professor praising me like some sort of rock star. I did this for the full hour, anticipating a great success in my academic career, a come-from-behind victory. And before you knew it, I was in his office, and the first thing he did was pull out my blue books to grade my final right there in front of me. It took him 15 long minutes to get through it, making sure to deduct a point here and a point there. But in the end, I got a 96, an A. Now on to the project. He said, "Let me begin by saying that in all my time serving as an adjunct, I've never seen a better business plan than this, and I've taught all over the world." I gave him the pre-rehearsed smile and nod and said thanks. For 10 minutes, he went on about how smart the method was, the undisputable nature of the performance results, and the clear need and want for such a product in such a marketplace. It had all the makings of a truly legitimate business, except for one thing, and the music stopped. "Excuse me," I said. He looked to me with a sad face and said, "The problem with your method is that it's too easy to understand and too simple to do. And once that's disclosed via prospectus, everyone will know how to do it themselves. And then why would they need to pay you to do it for them?" Oh boy, I never thought of it that way. He went on, "You see, in order for you to sell something like this, it has to be hard, complicated, and almost impossible for mere mortals to do. Then you can charge for it, and charge handsomely. In fact, the harder and more complicated anything is to do, the more expensive it can be." My shoulders hit the floor. He clearly wasn't a guy shy about giving Fs to grad students. I was afraid to speak, and so I just stared. He may have been shy, but he was not afraid to draw the line. And here it was. "This is a great idea," he said, "but this isn't idea school. It's business school, and there's no business in simple." "You deserve an F, but I can't give you one in good conscience," he said. "It's too good for that. So I'll give you an A for effort, and with an A on the final, congratulations. You earned an A in the course." Totally dejected but gracious, I thanked him for the A and headed for the door. As I reached the threshold, he called out, "Mr. Calandro, if I could make a suggestion, put this into a published work. It'd be a great book, and you could make a few bucks doing that." Well, 20 years later, I did just that by publishing my method in Lose Your Broker, Not Your Money on July 4th, 2011. And he was right. I did make a couple of bucks with it. But now, after all this time, I'm setting out to prove there's a business with my method because the need has never been greater, because the financial establishment has never been more corrupt, and because modern-day academia has failed to educate Americans on the basic concepts of investing. Of all the perils facing individual investors today, it is this lack of understanding that is the root cause for all of their investment woes. My objective is to deliver a platform to overcome every deficiency plaguing the individual investor by educating and supporting them to become savvy, self-reliant investors, using my revolutionary 1551 method that is smarter by design and superior by performance, which is easy to deploy and maintain. As part of the platform, I'm launching an online teaching and mentoring venue under the banner of 1551 University, an online think tank for skilled investors looking to collaborate and take deeper dives into money, markets, and investment, and an online social support network so that investors of all skill sets can have fluid access to unbiased coaching, information, and analysis. Just to be clear, this is not a get-rich-overnight trading scheme or some dark money parlay where you need a hot tip and a lot of luck to capture the dream of winning big. Instead, mine is a logical, long-term approach to building and accumulating wealth with BMW-like performance grounded in better engineering, method of construction, and componentry. Listen, all investment is long-term, and so all investors should have a long-term view, including the 65-year-old retiree who expects to live another 20 years. Every retirement account needs a certain portion of it to perform with maximum horsepower to stay ahead of the rapidly rising cost of living and end-of-life care. My 1551 method was designed to deliver robust returns most efficiently and cost-effectively. The program teaches and supports the entire investment function, from market analysis to portfolio construction, stock selection, asset allocation, as well as my market-driven approach to portfolio management that takes all the guesswork out of making decisions like when and what to buy, sell, or hold. Programs include on-demand instruction and support, one-on-one coaching sessions, monthly group forums, access to my Slack community, and a host of other resources, including detailed blueprints of my 1551 portfolios. I'm looking for people from all walks of life, skill sets, and vocations who are looking to learn the desirable skill of investing and are interested in joining what will prove to be the strongest network of independent investors found anywhere in the world, a collection of individuals who once thought they couldn't do this and now know they can. The entire platform has one objective: to support individuals in their quest for financial success and independence. And I'd like you to consider joining. The network is by invitation only, and with flexible programming, has timetables and pricing to serve any willing participant. Just because the financial establishment rigs the system against us doesn't mean we can't beat them at their own game. All my service does is stack the odds in your favor. And while beating the market can be as easy as throwing darts, that doesn't make it comfortable. And comfort is a key ingredient to success. After all, who wants their surgeon to operate with tight shoes on? Investing successfully isn't about picking the next hot stock or getting lucky. Instead, it's about assembling a team of above-average performers specifically selected to achieve a certain objective. In other words, you're looking to build a Navy SEAL team of investments to go to battle for you every day in what is expected to be a long and drawn-out campaign, as opposed to looking for Superman to entirely change your world in a single day. You see, the only way to be comfortable investing is to have a true understanding of what the market is, what makes it move, and an intimate knowledge of your portfolio, its components and allocations, and their role within the market. This kind of knowing makes the behavior of your portfolio as familiar to you as the actions of your best friend. My methods breed that kind of connection. And let's face it, crazy times are here and more are coming, as prognosticators from all corners are projecting another major correction is on its way. The first to ring that warning bell was historian Neil Howe in his excellent book entitled The Fourth Turning. Written in 1993, Howe predicted the September 11th terrorist attacks, the 2008 financial crisis, COVID-19, and among other things, the next massive financial crisis, which he calls the Great Devaluation. In my 2011 publication, I said the next major correction would make the '08 crisis look like quote-unquote child's play, and in fact, describe it further in two of my post-publication white papers entitled Surviving the Next Crash, written in 2016, and Chapter 9, Capitalizing on the Coming Crash, written in 2020. The reason for these dire predictions is because never before has the American system been so abused, with never-ending fiscal insanity and monetary madness that has compounded over decades. Not to mention corrupt policies like No Child Left Behind, the Patriot Act, Obamacare, open borders and endless wars, all of which caused an explosion of debt and new money printing that brought on the worst case of big government overreach and monetary devaluation mankind has ever experienced. Simply put, the system can't handle the load, and so it must adjust and correct, and perhaps collapse. The remedy to that disaster, I assure you, is not the same process, the same remedy, the same advisor, and the same failed investment scheme. That's why I'm creating a safe place for investors, free from establishment pomp and circumstance and any kind of sales pressure or promotion, where people can go and ask any question at any time and get honest information, independent analysis, and trusted guidance they can understand, along with my proving winning method. You can do this, and you must, because the establishment uses inflation and major market corrections to steal your wealth and independence, and they're going to try to do it again soon. There's no reason to let that happen, and I will help. So come and join the independent movement by booking a free, no obligation Q&A session right now by connecting with me through my website, email, or on LinkedIn. Or hit the Learn More button if one appears at the bottom of the screen. Thank you once again for your time and attention, and I hope to see you soon. Until then, live, love, and profit.